So welcome again, everyone, to Scrapbook Live for January 26th. This is kind of a special Thursday edition. I am Megan Jax. Thanks so much for joining in. Today's project, we're actually putting together something fairly recent from the blog. I didn't have to go very far back. I kind of just looked through the blog and see what kind of projects, spark some interest for me. I mean, there's lots of fantastic projects out there, but looking for ones that maybe have a technique that we haven't talked about before, or looking for ones that I say, ooh, I like this, but what if we did this? To show how to use different tools, different things, and kind of tackle those blog projects. So hopefully making you feel that you too can do it and you can see what things look like done with other collections. Those blog projects are fantastic to be utilizing them, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard to see beyond the tools or the collections that they've used. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to do Scrapbook Live, to really just show you the possibilities that you've got with your stash, your supplies, to make those projects work for you. So today's project, like I said, is fairly recent. It was done by Sachiyo. She's a creative memories advisor. She does a lot of stuff for the blog. And she created this wonderful mosaic frame using the Polar Lights collection. So I do usually get a few of my customers who message me and say, how do I do this? So they're the type of people that just need a little more than written instructions. They want to see maybe a video, a little more of a hand holding through it. And I'm always happy to do that kind of stuff. So we're going to be putting that together here. I have one little adjustment I'm going to be making today, based on what I need to do for my photos to make this work better for me. So I'm going to talk about that as we go through it. But we'll go ahead, I think, and swing over here to my table, and I'm going to show you all the things I'm working with today. And then we'll go ahead and get going. All right, so I've got my handout here. If you need the handout, if you're watching this on live, you will see it on the first comment in the live. If you're watching this on YouTube later, you'll see a link to the blog post that I have the handout listed for. So, and on these handouts, I always have the QR code here that goes up to, takes you back to the Creative Memories original blog post. This post, the directions here, I added a few little additional pieces that I wanted to make sure were very clear. So as we go through the directions, we'll talk about that, but I want to talk about what I'm using. So I am going to be using, I have some back to school photos. So here's my 8-year-old as he was getting ready to start 2nd grade earlier this year. And so I'm going to be using, I have 4 different photos that I'm going to be using here. And so I'm going to be using 4 photos here in the middle. I will be using a Peekaboo Pocket because, as we discovered, they're like the best thing ever for getting additional photos on a layout, especially where you've done a little bit more decorative techniques here. Using those Peekaboo Pockets will allow us to still keep all that fun decoration, but get quite a few photos on the layout itself. So I am using the back to school collection because it's back to school and it goes really well. So I've got 5 different pieces of paper here. They're all tonals. These all came actually out of the annual pack. So I created a happy album pack or album for my oldest to have all of his preschool through 12th grade photos in. And I cut down all of the annual pack down to size to fit into the happy album. But I was left with all of these pieces of paper that they're just over 5, they're right around 5 inches wide, 5 1/4 inches wide. And so they're great because they're all tonal. The exception here is this crafty paper, and that is actually from the silver and gold papers that just came out in December. The opposite side kind of has this little bit of pattern, but I love this craft paper. It makes me think maybe it's not quite the bulletin board paper that maybe you would associate with kind of school, but I love just the neutral textured brown to it. So I have that available as well. And then I also grabbed this tonal green. It's got dots all over it. And it is from the regular back to school paper as well. So I've just got some various papers I liked all the pieces of, working with a little bit of scraps, using those up. I need to have backgrounds to this. So the very first step is using a piece of navy cardstock as the base. We're going to actually create a frame that we build all of our pieces on. And then we're going to put that frame back onto another back piece of cardstock. And that's what actually is going to give us the outside and the inside grout line to it. So when you first look at this, you think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to cut all these little pieces down. And you don't. We create a frame, we lay that frame on top of the background piece, and that gives us that outer border and the inner border to our square. So I've got some papers. A recommendation I would have here is probably helpful if you don't use anything that has too much of a direction to it. So I put together a sample just to kind of work through a practice round to make sure I knew what I was doing. And that was kind of the one thing I did discover, that if I had anything that was too directional, if I have trees I need to be going a certain direction, or anything else, that I ran the risk of them not necessarily going the right way. Something might be upside down, who knows, right? So what I decided to do is just stick with things that were non-directional. There's a little bit of direction to this that has the chemistry set on it, but I think it's going to be okay. It's not too big of a deal. I think that worst, I'm going to have upside down microscopes. But that would be my little hint when it comes to picking out your paper, is possibly stay with more things that are non-directional. All right, the other item I'm going to do here, and I'm just going to talk about it before we dive into it, because maybe you'll want to make that decision before we get going. And step 2, they want us to cut the cardstock down to 11 3/4 inch, and then we will cut out a 2-inch wide frame. So this piece that has the all the pieces of paper on it is 2 inches wide. What that leaves us is then an inside area here that they tell us we use a 7.5-inch square base piece to put in the middle, and then we put our photos on top of that. Now, real quick, I'm going to show you guys my sample that I made yesterday as I was working through this, because that actually helped me determine how I was going to address my photos. So I put this one together. This is using the summer texture pack. There was a totally toned texture pack for summer. And I love how it turned out. And it gave me an idea of how much space I have here in the middle. And I followed the directions. I have a 2-inch frame. This is a 7.5-inch square in the middle. Now, I told you I want to use Peekaboo Pockets, so I've got to keep one of my photos at a 4x6 because I'm using a 4x6 Peekaboo Pocket. The other side, now I'm pretty narrow over here, and I want to use, and this, I don't have any mats on here right now. So what I need to do is I need to have something fairly skinny that comes in here. And I do have a skinny picture. I can crop this down. You can see I can come in here and chop him down, take some off of both sides, and probably tuck him in there. Well, as I'm looking at my directions, I think, well, does it have to be a 2-inch? Does it have to be a 2-inch frame? Can I make it 1 3/4 inches? What are the ramifications? I need to, so I'm thinking about this, like, I don't think it matters. So if the 2-inch frame, if you're thinking this is a little bit too small for you, that you want a little bit more space, a little more breathing room, which is kind of what I would like, I'm actually going to make my sample today at 1 3/4 inches frame. So step 2, we're still going to start with that 11 3/4 inch square, but then I'm going to be cutting 1 3/4 inches for my frame. You might want to stick with the 2-inch frame. You might want to take it down to 1.5 inches. But I think the 1 3/4 inches is going to give me my base piece here then that was 7.5 is going to actually be able to come out to be a full 8 inches. I'll gain 1/4 inch all the way around. So it'll actually be, it should be, instead of 7.5, it should be an 8-inch middle. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and get started then. So the first thing we need to do is I've got a piece of I'm using black, just black. I was going to use blue, but I ran out of blue, and then I realized it's not currently available on the website because it's coming back in March. But I'm using black. Black cardstock will be my base. I'm going to set this piece aside. I don't need it quite yet. I'm going to set all of my other pieces to the side too. My decorative pieces, I'll cut those down in a minute. We're going to start with step 2. So I'm going to come in here with my trimmer. The other couple things I want to point out that we are going to be using. If you have them available, I am going to be using binder clips. All right, I'm going to use the binder clips to help me make these inside cuts. If you have it available, you're going to want a ruler. And then you're also maybe going to want a pencil, and then of course adhesive. I'm going to raise my camera up just a little bit so you can get a little bit more space there with my my trimmer so you can see. So we use the binder clips here when we're making our frame. The pencil and the ruler are going to come in handy when we start putting our pieces on that frame. And then of course, adhesive. I'm going to be using repositionable adhesive. You're going to want to be able to lift your paper up if you need to. So that's going to be a really great option. And then of course, regular adhesive when we go to put that frame on the base page to mount your photos, things like that. You'll want that available. So we're going to start off with step number one, we put our base paper aside. Step 2, we're cutting that 11 3/4 inch base or for our frame. This is the outside edge of the frame. So 11 3/4 right here is what I'm going to do. 11 3/4. 11 3/4. Okay, so here is my 11 3/4 inch square. Just double checking to make sure I'm nice and square. Yep, looks good. Now what I am going to do, yes, thank you guys. I did see a question. I meant to address that. This is always use your own stash. I want you to use your tools, use your stash, use what you have available. So this is, if it's creative memories, great. If it's not creative memories, that's great too. It's all about getting pages done and just, you know, finding inspiration and learning new things. So we've got our 11 3/4 inch square. Now here is where I am making my adjustment. As I mentioned, I am going to be doing, instead of a 2-inch frame, I am going to be doing an 1 3/4. So an 1 3/4, if you are doing a 2-inch frame, I'm going to get you set up for that. All right. So if you're following the example, I'm going to get you set up, and then I'm going to make my adjustment down to an 1 3/4. So to do that, what you're going to do is you'll slide your paper in. You're going to line it up at 2 inches. Right here is the 2-inch mark. And then what you'll do is take your housing blade here, and you see that white line. I'm going to move it over to where it says 2 inches on this top ruler on my blade guide. I'm going to slide that over to 2 inches, and then I'll put a binder clip on the right side edge. Now I need to come in 2 inches from the outside edge, or this left side edge. Remember, it's at 11 3/4, so I'm going to subtract 2 from that and come down to 9 3/4. So that's where I'm going to put, if I'm doing a 2-inch frame, I'm going to put that at 9 3/4, and then I'm going to set my binder clip. And then all I have to do is cut back and cut between, rotate, line it back up here at 2 inches, cut, rotate, and keep going all the way around. That's how you get a 2-inch frame. You set your at 2 inches here, and it comes over to 9 3/4 inch here. Now I'm trying to be difficult. I want to have a 1 3/4 inch frame. So I'm going to adjust my clips for that. I'm going to come over here to where it says, instead of 2 inches, I'm coming back to an 1 3/4. And I'm going to set my binder clip. Now over here, it's a little bit of math, right? It's 11 3/4. I need to subtract an 1 3/4. So I come down, 3/4 of an inch takes me to 11, and then subtract 1 more inch, I'm at 10. So there we go, 10 inches. I'm going to be cutting from an 1 3/4 all the way over to 10. And I have little lovely guides, things to tell you that. I'm cutting from an 1 3/4 over to 10 inches. I've set binder clips to help me with that. Now I can't cut, those are my stops. The other thing I need to do is, I told you here, you line up at 1 inch or 2 inches. When you're doing a frame, you're going to line it up. I need to be at an 1 3/4, not at 2 inches, at an 1 3/4. So I'm going to line it up at an 1 3/4. I'm leaving this there to remind myself that I need to be at an 1 3/4 and not 2 inches. And now I can just make all 4 of my cuts. The binder clip makes it really easy when you have those repetitive cuts. So we just keep going back and forth and just make all 4 of those cuts. You'll end up with your frame. It could be a 2-inch frame, 1 3/4. Maybe you're doing 1 inch. This technique should work. The binder clips will work for any size frame you need to make. The overall mosaic frame that we're making, I think, should be fine regardless of how wide your frame is. Okay, so there we go. I've got my frame all done. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this piece aside. This is actually used for mats later. Or it just becomes scrap. It depends on if you're going to use mats. If you're not, I'm not sure I'm using mats. So this might just become scraps, but it just needs to be set aside for the moment. And you can actually set your frame aside for just a few minutes. We're going to go and cut all of those decorative pieces first. All right. So I'm going to remove my binder clips. And now we're ready to start in on step 3, which is cut 4 12-inch strips or 4 by 12-inch strips of various designer papers. And then we're going to cut them as shown in this photo here. We're going to be cutting them on an angle. So you're going to want to have your pencil. If you have your cutting mat available, that will help you to make all of those cuts or the lines or to mark where you're going to be making all of your angled cuts. So the first paper I've got 5 different pieces. You may only need to use, well, you could use really as many patterns as you want. I am not going to be using the reverse side. So I'm just going to be using the colors you see here. The opposite side to mine, because I cut them out of that annual pack from the back to school, I am just going to be just using this side here. I'm not going to be using the back side because of they're from the annual packs, but you guys can be able to flip yours over and things like that. So we'll go ahead and get started cutting these all down to 4 inches wide. I think the only one I can't get to 4 because I don't have enough of it is going to be this this piece here. I'm going to still cut it on an angle and just make it work as best I can. I think it's just shy of 4 inches. So we're going to try our best, but the rest of them I will trim down to 4 inches. Just giving them all a trim here. Guys, if you're making this right now or you're going to make it later, you should share with me what you're going to be, what collections you're using. Are you going to use, stick all in the same collection? Are you going to mix and match? This could also be done with cardstock. So you grab your scraps. It doesn't have to be made with designer paper. You can make it with cardstock. Let's set my trimmer aside for a minute. We're going to come in here. I'm going to line these up, and I need to mark 1 inch from the top right. I'm going to come over 1 inch, and I'm going to make a mark with my pencil, and I'm going to come in from the bottom left. I'm going to be coming in here. And I'm just going to do that on all of them. 1 inch from the top right, 1 inch from the bottom left. So they asked for 4 pieces. I'm using 5 because I like the colors. And part of that is because I'm not using the reverse side. I wanted to have more than just 4 colors. I probably could have been just fine using the blue, these 4 right here, but I really thought the addition of this kind of the neutral, the brown in there will give it a nice bit. So on this particular piece, because I'm short. It probably wouldn't matter too much if I would still just come in, like kind of center it in between here and mark it at 1 inch on both. But I think what I'll do, I'm going to line this up on the left side here at 4 inches. I'm going to come in, mark it at 1 inch from the bottom left, and then come in 3 inches and mark it there. So this piece right here is going to be a little bit narrower than normal, but I think it'll all work out fine. I think these angles are just kind of, you know, get you started. And I'm just going to cut from piece to piece. This one was my smaller one. I'm going to set it aside. It's only a little bit off. You can see there, it's just a little bit narrower. It's not a big deal. The angle is still the same. Yeah, so some of you are just joining us right now on the Facebook Live. Yeah, we use the binder clip technique. There is a video I have out there on YouTube that is about using the binder clips to help you when you're having to make inside cuts, inside frames. The frame cuts, when you're just cutting out the inside, it's great because those binder clips, they clip right on here and it creates that stop so you don't overshoot your mark. And so it's a great technique. I use it quite a bit. As you get more and more comfortable with making frame cuts, you may not need to use it, but if you're just getting started, or it can be a great option. All right, so now I've got all my pieces here. All right, so this is super exciting. Now it's time to start putting this thing together. Got my adhesive. I'm almost out, so I have a spare piece or a spare refill right there, ready to go. And now I've got my frame. So now here's where we get started. I am going to probably go in kind of, I don't want to say a rainbow order, but kind of. I'll probably just go ahead and start off with the red. And here's where I think what I'll do is I'll start off in this upper corner. And I'm going to go ahead and just put this piece in place here. One of the reasons I'm doing it is, like I said, I do have a little bit of a direction to my paper, and that's going to let me put, by putting this one in place first, it will let me go ahead and just kind of get that in there. It's a big chunky piece of red. That's going to be just fine. So what I'm going to do here is just put some adhesive down. And I liked starting in a corner. When I built my sample, that worked out really well. So just start off, I would recommend starting off in a corner. All the pieces, I can tell you, everything went really great until I got back over to this corner. And that's why I got a little bit of tips to tell you on how to finish this sucker off. So the first piece goes in here. Now what I can do is I can come in and I can cut off the excess. I am not worried about coming in and cutting really close. I'll clean it all up. I'm just going to come in and cut the bulk off. Next, I'm going to come in with some yellow here. Now, as I'm deciding how much of this I want to show, probably what I'm going to do is I like to think about if I'm going to keep some overhang. Maybe I want to have enough overhang that I could actually trim this off and use it in another spot. But the one thing you can see here is I need to keep that, the grout line, the margin between the pieces. I want to keep those as even as possible. And I am going to kind of just do a little bit of the rainbow order. So it's going to go red, yellow, green, blue, probably the brown, and then come over to the red. That's kind of what I'm thinking of doing. I might put the brown between the red and the the blue and the green. We'll see. And really what I'm worried about is trying to make this nice and even. The other thing you can do is I could come in nope, I'm going to do it this way. Play around with it a little bit There's really no mistakes. Really what you want to do is you just want to keep that line there. I don't have to worry about cutting this off if I don't want yet. I can come in here. Maybe I want to come in with a little bit of a bigger piece. I can always come back with more adhesive after I've got kind of things put into place. Now here's where I need to make a decision. Do I want to come in and then I would come over here again, I would be having the red at my corner. I think I like that. One thing I did find as I was putting this together, as close as I could get with some of these pieces coming into the corner, that was just really helpful. I really don't want to try to have a piece necessarily turn the corner. That was challenging. So what you're going to want to do, you can see this blue piece, I'm in here pretty close, pretty tight to that corner. So what all I have to worry about is maintaining a grout line here, and then however the piece falls this way. So as I pull this paper, this blue paper down, it's getting a little bit wider and wider, and now I'm at that corner. So that's where I want it to be. Now when I come in here with my red piece, what I'll do is I'm just going to pull this bottom corner, line it up there. I could come over here, because what I'm doing when I'm going to trim my inside, anything that hangs over this inside edge is easy for me just to snip off with a pair of scissors. So if I hang over this direction, it's not a big deal. So I could actually come in here with my red, and as long as I don't see any black here, I want to cover up that entire corner. And then this part where it's angling. So here, let me just adhere this on and I'll show you guys. I'll bring it up closer to the camera where you can see. I will be able to cut off that little sliver. There's a little sliver that's sticking beyond my frame. What I needed to do is make sure I cover up this section, this edge, and then of course here, but I'm maintaining that grout line there. So let me go ahead. I'm going to do a quick snip on some of these pieces just to get the excess removed. Like I said, I'm not worried about cutting it super close to my frame yet. Don't cut your frame, so be careful of that. But I just want to get these excess pieces off. Makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. There we go. And now I can turn. I'm going to go ahead. Well, I don't think I necessarily need to. You may need to rotate your frame a little bit to make it easier for you to work with. Now I'm going to come in here and I want a little bit of a chunky piece of yellow. I love the yellow. Yellow is a great contrast in there, and I used a smaller piece over here. So we're going to come in a little bit chunkier. Mixing up, trying to, make sure you're using some thinner pieces, some fatter pieces. So for here, I think I'm going to use a smaller piece of green. If your grout lines aren't perfect, don't worry about them. You just want them roughly to be all the same width. I can tell a few of mine aren't maybe as wide as they should be, but don't stress that part. Nobody's going to know the difference. Come in here. Before I get to this corner, I am just going to kind of play with it. I'm just going to lay pieces in because I've got to see how my corner is going to show again. Because again, I don't want this piece to turn the corner here. I'm just laying in right in next to it. It's fine if it angles down. I think that's too much of an angle there. So you just have to play with it a little bit. Have a practice round before you get going. Use some scraps, use cardstock. You know, we always have little scraps of cardstock. Anything that you feel like you don't quite get right, well, that's what embellishments and stickers and everything else are for, right? We can cover those up. And just keep putting those pieces in place. I'm coming over here again. Like I said, I want to make sure that the edge of this red is right at that corner. And now I'll come back in with the yellow. I'm going to cut off these pieces so I have So the great thing about this yellow is because those pencils are non-directional, so it's wonderful, wonderful. Love that the pencils are non-directional. Just lining it up. And you just keep working all the way around. Green. That's next is green. I'm one of those persons that I feel like I work better if I have that pattern in my mind. I'm not grabbing at papers. I just know what's going to come next. That's why I worked. I'm pretty certain when I get up to this upper corner that it's not going to line up correctly. And I'll talk about once I start to turn this corner and I'm laying out my colors, I might need to make an adjustment. And that's kind of, I stick to the pattern all the way around until we get over here and then realize, oops, let me make an adjustment. Maybe I need to pull in, change it up a little bit. So that's a potential issue over on that side. But yeah, that's a worry about later. I have to tell you, so my 19-year-old, he's in college. And of course you call him and you talk to him about some stuff and it'll be these like little gentle reminders, you know, that like trying to like kick the bird out of the nest and let him fly on his own. But he needs a few reminders like, hey, what about this? And he's so funny because he'll say, that's a tomorrow me problem, or that's a next week me problem. And so I think it's hilarious. And I do find myself, you know, kind of referring to some of that saying, well, that's a tomorrow me problem, that I don't have to worry about that today. I will take care of whatever it is tomorrow. And so again, here, as I'm getting close to this corner, I'm going to see here. I think I'm going to make an adjustment. I could come in. I have a narrow piece. A little too narrow there. So come in with, I'm going to try a narrow piece of blue, or the blue, come in with a little bit more red, and then try a narrow bit of yellow. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get some green over here is what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to give myself the right spacing here to come in with green, so that when I turn the corner, it's going to be a green piece here instead of the yellow. And I think that should work. Yeah, so Karen, you're saying your son uses the Tomorrow Me. So I'm wondering, the kids have to have heard that somewhere. I do not keep up. I know there's some of you out there that maybe follow some of the TikTok stuff or the whatever, wherever these kids these days hear these things. I don't necessarily follow that. So if that stuff is out there and being said, I'm not hearing it. And so when my kids say things, then I'm like, oh, okay. I'm a little behind the times. What's really funny is some of the stuff that Cody will pick up on, and he says he doesn't always get the context right. He's pretty good, but he's pretty funny when he comes in trying to be cool and use the big phrases like his siblings do. I'm sure he'll have a whole new set of phrases by the time he's in high school. We just got to survive elementary school first. And once again, coming in here with the green. Brown. Okay, so now that I've turned my corner, what I'm going to do, and I'm on my last straightaway, I'm going to go ahead and come in here, and I'm going to just do dry fits of everything to see if I have how I like my spacing. Let's see. Yellow. So I think I need to use a little bit of a narrow piece of red, which I really don't have a narrower piece of red. So I'm just going to bring this down as far as I can. Come in there. Oh, I'm supposed to use blue. Supposed to use blue. That's why. There we go. Red. I'm getting really close to the red. Let's see. And I'm going to put brown in there. So that's what I'm going to be doing. That's how I'm going to space it out. So you see what I'm going to have a little bit of a gap between my reds. Or I could maybe come in here. What if I move this blue over here and I do go ahead and put red there? That feels pretty balanced. I'm looking at it on the overhead thing and I can just kind of see. So I've got the red, which is a color that's really calling to me. It's really, it's kind of standing out. The yellow stands out and I can see that those are spaced nicely. So this is going to be the pattern I'm going to go with to finish this off. Let's put these into place. Okay, so as we're getting down to our last little bit here, this is where our ruler is going to come into play. Because what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to come in here and I can either line this up like such and then use my ruler. Well, here, let me get these final pieces into place. Because I'm going to show you guys. It's kind of like when you're having to put tile in and you've got to, mark your lines around. So I've got to get this piece to fit into here, and it really doesn't. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick one edge that I'm gonna line it up with, and I'm gonna line it up with my straight edge. So I've got the straight edge here. I'm gonna line this up where I want it. Now this angle, I have got to mimic this angle along the edge of my piece of paper here. So what I'm gonna do is I can, if I want, I'm gonna put a little bit of adhesive there, tack it into place. Now I'm gonna grab my ruler and I'm gonna line up my ruler following the line of my angled piece here. And I'm gonna come in and I'm going to draw that same angle on my paper. I'm actually gonna scoot it over a little bit because I need to give myself that grout line. So I'm off my edge. I'm still following the same angle of that piece of paper, of this green. And I'm gonna transfer that same angle to this piece with my pencil. I had to do this on my other one as well. So I can bring this up and you guys can maybe see, kind of maybe not, it's in a pencil line on a blue paper, but you can kind of see it glistening, that pencil line glistening. That's where I transferred the angle. So now I'm just gonna use my scissors and come in. And now I should be able to place that in there. There we go. I've got a little bit of space here, but what I can do is I can just move this piece. I need more adhesive. Oh no, actually I'm fine. There we go. So now I've got that final piece put in place. I had to do that same technique on the other one where I'm just using that ruler to transfer the angle to my piece. And then I can cut excess off. And then after I cut excess, I'll be able to you can still just come in with your scissors and do a close cut all the way around, or you can use your trimmer. I did trimmer on the outside and I used the my scissors on the inside because it was just easier. So I'm lining this up. And cutting off all of those excess pieces. And the inside part I cut with scissors. It was easier than trying to do it any other way. So just as you know, as you're trying to do it, if you want to try the inside cuts again, but I just thought it was going to be easier just using scissors than it is to try to inside cut all those pieces. You can use your micro tip, you can use your regular scissors. The pieces in the corner are a little bit more challenging to cut. Just cleaning up that edge. Couple more cuts here. I'm really excited to see how this is going to look. This is reminder, I cut my frame at 1 3/4 inches, so my frame is not quite as bold and chunky as the original layout. But as I mentioned, I thought it would work a little bit better with my photos. So there you guys can see. That looks great. And now when it comes time, we'll mat it. It'll just go right here on there we go. So Emily's making a comment that, yeah, you could just put all your pieces on, leave your center in place. Like I could have left my center in place, put my pieces on, and then just cut out that center frame. You could definitely do it that way if you want. There's lots of ways to attempt to do this type of a layout. There we go. Little spot I could see that needed to be cleaned up. And so I'll go ahead, I'm going to use regular adhesive to put this mat down, or the frame in place. Want to leave about 1/8 inch. You should have 1/8 inch all the way around. I think my black paper may actually be slightly bigger than 12 by 12 as I'm looking at it. Yeah, it's just ever so slightly. Creative Memories does say there's about anywhere between 1/16 to 1/8 inch margin of error that they give their paper. They consider that good enough, but there we go. You guys can see that in place there. So now the middle, if I wanted to include my photos, I would need to have a back piece in here. And I'm thinking I'm going to use this kind of a, looks like the composition notebook, kind of like a tonal version of that pattern. And I think I'm going to use that on the inside. And you can see here, I may not necessarily mat my photos. So I can either go with this color, with this, or I could come in with the blue. I'm going to go with this one. So I believe I should be able to cut an 8 by 8 inch square to make this work. I'm going to double check with my ruler though, since I made that adjustment, that yes, I'm going to cut an 8 by 8 inch square. I can see my opening is technically an 8 at an 8 1/4, but I want that 1/8 inch grout line all the way around. So it needs to be 8 inches. So open this up. I'm going to cut this down to 8 inches. If you're following the directions, you'd be cutting a 7.5 inch square. But I adjusted mine to be just a little bit different dimensions to handle my photos better. So that's going to go right in the middle there. And then what I'll do is I'll be able to put on, this side is going to be a 4 by 6. I have the photo of my husband and Cody walking to school, and I actually have another photo, but it's got a couple of his classmates and such. So I don't want to I won't show that here on the live due to privacy reasons. But when you flip this open, there'll be another photo on the inside. And then I've got to come over here. So this photo is actually probably, well, I'm not sure which photo is going to be there for sure. Let me put this one in place though. Sometimes when it comes to Peekaboo Pockets, I kind of have to think about, well, which one goes on the bottom and then which is my inside flap and how do I want this story to be told? So, but for now, I'm going to tack this one into place. It's a 4 by 6. I'm just going to tack it into place, a little bit of light adhesive there. And then what it's going to allow me to do is I can figure out how wide. See, this 4 by 6 is still too wide. So, but I already said I can narrow this down a little bit. I've got a lot of width on either side that I'll be able to come in and chop that. So I could use my ruler. That would be really probably helpful and just know how big I can measure it. I need to come in. It looks like if I did just about a little over 3.5 inches wide. So I need to cut off about a 1/4 inch, just shy of a 1/4 inch from each side. I don't want quite 3.5. We'll leave the full 6 inches so that both photos are the same height. There we go. And then I have all the space down here that I can come in with a title. I can come in with probably a title is what I'm going to do. I do have stickers that I could come in with. In fact, I could come in with the pencil if I wanted to, or the ABCs clear across the bottom. I don't know. Those are the kind of details. I'm going to probably do a little bit of a title first, and there's other embellishments. I don't necessarily feel like I need to put the borders on like they did in the sample. I love those flocked borders from the Polar Lights. Don't get me wrong. Those are just delightful. But what I'm thinking I want to do is, I think I want to just let a little bit more of the design. I worked so hard on that design, right? I want a little more of that shine through, and I'll use just some embellishments. There's adorable embellishments in this collection, and so forth. So I'm going to finish up some of those details here after we're wrapping this up, but hopefully you guys feel inspired. You feel like now you can tackle it. Lots of ways that you guys could get going with this. So let me swing back up here. All right, so hopefully you all enjoyed that. Thanks for tuning in and watching. I'll have this put together here, the final version of it. I've got some space in their journal if I want, because I'm going to have those Peekaboo Pockets. I'm not going to have any space in when I open up those pockets to be able to have the journaling, so I have to put a little bit in here. It's the first day of school. It's not like I usually journal too much, because he probably doesn't want me to journal all the details of how crazy it is getting ready to go to school in the morning. That's another page. But it's fine. It turned out great. I'm really happy with it. And I like the adjusted size. Just gives it a little bit more room in there for those photos. So when you see this, you could have, taken that down to 1.5 inches, even if you wanted to. So, like I said, thanks for joining me on this Thursday. Next week, we should be back to Wednesdays. It's going to be February 1st, right? Isn't that? I mean, we're already at February next week, I think. I'm double checking. There we go. So yeah, February 1st is next Wednesday. So I'm not sure what we're going to do for a project. I did have somebody who messaged me about one of the tropic time layouts, that there's one that uses the decorative trimmer. And so maybe we'll give that one a spin, or I'll see what else I can find on the blog. I love the decorative trimmer. So I'm always up for doing a layout that uses a decorative trimmer. But we'll see what is planned for that. So next Wednesday, 10 o'clock, we'll be doing that. And with the start of February, guys, remember we have Power Hour. Tess and I have our Power Hour class will be coming up. I believe it's on February 7th. February 13th is we're doing our Serenity Page Makers class. If you guys have questions about either one of those, you can find them at megganandtessa.com. And then, yeah, that's kind of the fun. I have an in-person retreat this coming up in February, and Tess is flying out for that. And I have several other people that are flying in. I'm super excited to see some of these people, meet some new people for the very first time. And I'm having a few people that are coming back. So I feel kind of like we're getting, kind of like my tribe getting back together. So I have locals that I love working with. And so it's a great time to get together and, just enjoy getting away. So that'll be President's Day weekend. So coming up here in a few weeks. So, all right. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of the day, the rest of the weekend. Maybe you have a scrappy weekend plan. That's always very exciting. We're definitely in the thick of scrapbook season as we get through winter. We're dreaming of spring, but in the meantime, we'll just keep on making those pages and working on those projects. So, all right, everyone take care. I will see you all next week. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for watching.